Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Steve Parker this afternoon, and he's going to be talking about, are you fishing for the right fish?
So I want to look at, give you an example of some strategic thinking on your sales and on your marketing. And then I want to just have a chat about an element of both, which are sadly not often considered. An example I'm going to give you is about a client of mine who happens to be based in Thailand. Just before, when I first started working with them, one of their objectives was to get one of the biggest fish they could find. They wanted to get their products into a major supermarket in the UK and in several countries globally. And before I started to do a load of work with them, they actually got one. So they got really excited. They'd been trying to get this major client. They'd been trying to get this big order for ages because they thought it would be, set them on the way to do it. And finally cracked it with a buyer of a major supermarket, a big fish. And they thought, well, we're going to be okay now. And to be fair, the order was 60 or 70,000 pounds. But we then started to talk to them about what sort of conversations they'd had with the big fish. And they said, well, it was funny really, because we started off by being able to tell them what we were really all about, which was that we had our own farms for our vegetable dishes, and we had most of our own ingredients to create the sauces, and we even had our own fishery to be able to create the, if you like, tinned pilchards in a certain type of sauce. But when we got the order, it all suddenly started to change. All the negotiations turned to, forgive me, screwing us down on price. It moved away from what we actually wanted to talk about. It was moved away from what we were doing. But we agreed the deal, and then they waited for the orders to come in. And they thought they knew the big fish really well, but all they really got was, can you give us some free stuff? Can you do all your own marketing? Can you help us to promote it? Or we just want to tell you it's not selling very well, so we moved it to the back of the store. So all of a sudden, the big thrill, the big fish that they'd caught, that they'd spent 18 months getting, was not quite the big fish that they thought they wanted to. So next slide, Peter, if you can. So all of the conversations they had were things like the conversations they'd moved away from their original job for. The PLC bit, we're not getting enough return per square metre of shop space. We can't put you at the front because it's not interesting enough. We want a better margin out of it, so can you give us some more of a discount? And this was a family company, and it is a family company. And so they went back rather naively and said, well, what are you doing to promote it? And they were told, well, we don't do anything, you have to do that as well. They didn't realise that you had to actually continue to feed the big fish to keep them interested. You had to invest in it all of yourself. And so strategically, we started to work with them on targeted marketing of bringing more people into the store. We started to work with them on talking to store owners and store managers and other people within lots of stores in selected areas. So the big fish wasn't the answer, and they just needed to do it. So you've almost all got a big client that you're absolutely reliant on. And I just wanted to think or discuss with me your thoughts on how you get more out of your big fish so that you're not reliant on it and you're not going back to doing the kind of work that you might have escaped from when you started your company in the first place, because this is your big chance. This is you, this is your family, this is your business. This isn't to go back to what you did before. So a little bit of strategic thinking on sales. Next slide then, Pete, please. So there's the word on it. Don't expect the buyer to drive sales. Even when you've got a big client, still do lots of marketing for them. Still talk to them about lots of things other than bottom line margin. Think about ways of doing it. And although the big fish buyer wasn't interested in anything other than that, the client actually got a chance to talk about textures and flavors and getting more people into a store and attracting them into stores and doing promotions in individual stores where they could be present and they could get their personality across and they could get their feelings across and they could show that it was a family. And then we encourage them to not be reliant on one customer and that other people in that particular chain would be more empathetic to wanting to know about what they really wanted to talk about. I think I'm okay for the next slide, Pete, please. Okay. Forget that. Anyway, so we started to get them and introduce them to restaurants and chefs who actually were interested in flavors and taste differences and giving people a more enjoyable experience. And we were trying to persuade people who bought Indian food to try a Thai variation. We were trying to get English people who always bought Prince's and John West to buy something with a little bit of extra flavor to it, with a different color and a different flavor. And so now they've caught lots of smaller fish who talk to them about things that they want to talk to them about and who actively promote it and who don't screw them through the floor for margin and who don't move them to the back of the store without telling them. So when you're looking at things from your sales and your marketing point of view, let's think about doing things strategically rather than just that the biggest fish is the best one to catch, because you might, you're flexible enough, you want to do it. So if you want somebody to look at it from an outside perspective and from a global perspective, let's have a bit of a chat. It doesn't matter whether you're a service industry, whether you've actually got a product or not, there are always ways of making a better connection. Now, the next Connect session I did, apart from a rather infamous session on my first spa experience, which we might do later on, wanted to touch about something else which is less often discussed in sales and marketing, and that's getting an emotional connection with the people that you want to buy. Now, that can be a little bit embarrassing at first, but my world is full of needing to have made an emotional connection with people in all of the countries I deal with, because otherwise they're not going to remember me. They're not going to feel comfortable, and frankly, they're not going to listen. So if you bring that back to selling into the Black Country and Worcestershire and the UK, it comes back to the same challenges, which are the ones on your screen. You always want to get you and your products or your services noticed and remembered in the right way, in amongst all this overload of information. And you want to get people comfortable with them so that they come up with new ideas and they come up with new thoughts on you and your products. Can you just do this? Have you ever thought of that? I know you say you do that, but could you help me with this? That's a really good sign of a good relationship. And what you actually want them to do is to keep you in their heads every day of the week, or whenever there's an opportunity. You want them to think of you, and you want them to keep buying and to naturally and enthusiastically tell everybody else. Well, you can't do that unless you make an emotional connection. So how do we do that? Next slide, Pete. I just want you to, following this, if I've made an emotional connection with you, just think about how much your clients and your prospective clients really know about you. Have they really connected with you? Have they just listened to your spiel and they bought because it's the best price? Have they really thought through what you're really doing? And have you reminded you enough? And then one of my pet hates, a lot of advisors and consultants and gurus, if you were a service, they told you to productize it. Well, just see the slide. For heaven's sake, don't productize it. You'll lose the emotional connection with it. You'll lose what's, your personality from it if you try and productize it. So what do I mean by an emotional connection? Next slide then, Pete. You get an emotional connection with all sorts of things. You get it by the sound. So concentrate on the way you talk to people. They do it by sight. If you're thinking of food analogies for now, some wine companies are advertising with the sound of opening the bottle or pouring the wine in the glass. The sight in food, obviously, it's hugely important. If you haven't got the right packaging, and some of you will have seen me do presentations about a client who puts a pigeon on the front of the tin. Sight is really important. It's what you reach for. It's what you reach for without thinking. Touching, you've heard me say that I think you should always meet people because people want to touch you. They want to see that you're real. They want to test that you're genuine. Smell can be really important. I'm doing an exercise or a process, if you like, with somebody, family business practice member, who's trying to get in with factory managers, and we're putting the smell of Swarfiga on things that we're selling them, sending to them, so that they can relate to the smell and they can know that people are that you understand them and you can sympathize with them. And obviously taste. And whether it's food or whether it's a service industry or whether it's export sales or marketing or whether it's doing something strategically, it's about creating a memorable experience for them. Obviously in food, it's about in restaurants, in entertainment, in presentations. It's when you meet people. Years when I first got involved in the family business practice, I said that presentations aren't just about the words that you say. It's about an experience that you create when you do it. With radio, it's not. It's about the enthusiasm being generated from somebody in a studio or somebody who's on a Zoom call like Gillian Anderson was and Neil was the week before. People who come on, their enthusiasm miraculously goes through from a computer down a phone line and out into an audience. So it's about creating a memorable experience, because the memorable experience, the sight, the sound, and the intonation creates that memorable experience which stands out from the hundreds of thousands of messages they're trying to cope with. So that's another thing which we're coming to. How long have I had, Pete?
Oh, you've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay. Well, let's try an experiment, and then I'll do a wrap while I can. I put on the bottom of the last slide that if you only do video calls and have no other connection, can you be sure you're being remembered in the right way when you need to? So I should have pointed out at the start of this presentation that I entirely make these up. Although I'm considered to be an expert in international trade and global stuff, I've never had a chance to read any books. When I spent 25, 30 weeks a year overseas for 10 years, I was doing 18, 20 hours a day for 2.5 weeks at a time. And when I wasn't concentrating on the client and what I was doing next, I was asleep. Every chance I had, I was asleep. So forgive me You can't read a book other than a chapter in a Peter Roper book about stuff that I do. See, I thought I'd better plug it, Pete.
Thanks, mate.
I'm sure we've still got some left. So here's a thought on some psychology. Did any of you get the message about having some business cards handy? Anybody get a message about having a business card handy? If you haven't got a business card handy, that would be really good. Now, if you've got a business card handy, and I've got mine, let's just wave some at the screen just so that I can see that you've got some. Sorry, it's audience participation time. God, I hate audience participation. Ian's just gone off to get some because he forgot the memo.
Yeah, it's a pretty good result, that.
Pretty good. Okay, fantastic. Now, in the UK, we tend to just hold them in one hand. Ian's back now. Good. In the UK, we just tend to sort of hold them willy-nilly, don't we? And we pass them across to somebody. Now, what I'd like you to do is to hold them with two hands and face them to the screen. Okay, fantastic. Thanks for the audience participation. Now, what I'd like you to do, should you wish to do so, is I'd like you to pass the card with both hands to somebody to your right, to your left, or above you, depending on what the screen does, depending on what format you've got on the screen. So hand it to somebody. I'm going to hand it to somebody on my left or right. Pass it to somebody. Make a note of their name. And if somebody's passing to you one, if you could pretend to receive it with both hands. Now, as an experiment for next week, what I'd like you to do is to make a note of the person that you've passed it to and to send them to one in the post. You can either get the names and addresses from me or from Peter or off the Family Business Practice site. But I'd like you to put them in a post with or without a note and post it to them. Because by doing that, you're making an emotional connection with them. And should you choose to do so, and let's face it, it's only going to cost you the cost of a stamp. I think if I take 2 minutes of the Family Business Practice next Monday, I bet if I asked you to name who was next to you on this Family Business Practice session, you'll struggle to remember, but you'll remember the person that you sent the business card, that you received a business card from, and you'll remember the person that you posted it to. And that could be the start of an emotional connection. It could be the start of your emotional sales and marketing. Next slide then, Pete, please. So that's me. That's some strategic thinking on sales and on marketing and on connecting with people emotionally through your sales and marketing. Always remember the need for the emotional connection. Always remember the need for developing great relationships over a period of time, having great relationships with key people. Remember that even if you're a one-person company, you don't have to be a line on a list. You don't have to be a return per square meter of space. It's you, it's your business. So as the usual catch on, my details are on the bottom. If you want to chat with me over a cup of tea to talk about how I can help you test your business plan, if you want me to help you with your sales and marketing, and if you want me to share experiences of how I've caught some big fish and some small ones to help my clients make lots of profit, just give me a shout and we'll meet up if you want to, or we'll have a cup of tea and we'll send each other business cards over Zoom. Thanks very much for listening.